This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
So welcome to the Arnott General Store. We're standing in the newest building in the Morriston Heritage Village, which is right next to Grey Roots Museum and Archives up by Owen Sound. And the General Store has been part of the plan for Morriston Heritage Village since we came to this location about 20 years ago. Staff started to draft up concepts as way back as 2016 and did tons of research and visited all kinds of different heritage buildings to see what they should be doing. And then in 2021, with the help of Dom Construction, we actually broke ground and started building the General Store. Then after the hard outside was created, Grey Root staff got to work on finishing the interiors. Staff like Ted Noble did the amazing floors and tin ceilings that you'll see in the General Store. And our other facility staff, Alan O'Neill and Stephen Melville, worked on the fine trim and a million and one other small details. It's been a real team effort here. The next Grey Roots department that stepped up to bat was the collections folks. They're the ones who have been dressing the store with all these beautiful counters and display cases, not to mention the over 400 artifacts and replicas that you'll see on all of the shelves. They've done an amazing job, and I congratulate Sim Salata and Nikita Johnston for their attention to detail and creative problem solving. I'd also like to send a huge thanks to the gentleman standing behind me. This is Mr. Thomas Wheeldon, who sponsored the General Store, and thanks to his sponsorship, we were able to create these cabinets that you see behind us that are custom-made solid wood, created by the talented Charles Davies. So they really are the centerpiece that make the space really look like a general store. And now that the scene is set, the torch gets passed to our engagement team, who are the people who bring the village spaces to life. They interpret the history for the visitors, and I send my thanks to Stephanie McMullen for her guidance to staff and volunteers. I've heard there's a lot of volunteers who are eager to take a shift in the General Store, so we have no worries filling the place. So something I really loved in the interview with your dad was the talk about the social aspects of the General Store in the community and how people could really expect a bit of a social visit when they came to get their groceries. It made me really think about the opportunities we could have here, and whether that's bringing some music into the General Store or storytelling or even sport. There was a part in the interview where your dad talked about horseshoes being played outside, and I think even baseball games where people could come in and get a drink from the General Store after they were cheering for their team. So I think it really opens up a lot of opportunities for what we could do to really bring this place to life. And thank you very much, Thomas.
You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure working with you, and I think people are really going to love this store and getting to come and experience all the hard work.
Hi, I'm Tom Wheeldon from Fairmont Security. We're here now in the newly created Arnott General Store, Grey Roots, Morristown. I would like to thank the County of Grey and Grey Roots for entering into another partnership with my company. The first one we did was a couple of years ago with the creation of Zeus's Room, named after my canine dog. It's an interactive area for small children who come to Grey Roots to entertain them. Then, during the COVID period, we entered into a second project, which is the Arnott General Store, as you heard Joe talk about just previously. My connection to the Arnott General Store is it was ran for a decade by my grandma and grandpa. It was also where my father Francis grew up in a young part of his life, working and watching the development of the Arnott General Store and the settlement of Arnott, which back at that time was thriving. However, now it's just like a lot of other small communities in the County of Grey. There's a pioneer plaque there. We were able to capture this interview before my dad's passing about 6 months ago. And the information that we got in that interview helped us in the direction of ideas for the Arnott General Store. So on behalf of my company, myself, Janet, and my 3 girls, Amber, Emily, and Chloe, please enjoy this trip back in time.
I'm Stephanie McMullen from Grey Roots Museum and Archives, and today I'm here with Frances Wheeldon, whose family owned the general store in Arnott. So thank you for joining us today to talk about the store. Can you tell us where exactly Arnott is?
Well, I think you should rephrase that to was.
Okay.
But it's situated on number 10 highway at the intersection of the second concession of what was Holland Township.
Okay.
In those days. And really, it's other than the building representing the store, and that there was nothing else to determine the difference for any other part of the surrounding area there. You know, it was just countryside. Mm-hmm. And the railroad came through there at one time and intersected at the highway. And Arnott was, in the old days, what I call the old days anyway, a rather, well, a thriving little community. I don't know whether you want me to expand on some of that or not, but it just to fill in the background, there was a railroad there with a siding for the railroad's convenient for loading cars of lumber, logs, whatever in Arnott. But there, you know, in the early days there was 2 hotels in Arnott and several houses situated there on the corner, so that all sort of went together with the general store.
Okay. So it sounds like it was a bit of a hub for the surrounding countryside.
Well, in those days I'd call it more of a meeting place. They had even a town hall.
Oh, okay.
Which wasn't very big, but it was a hall, and elections were held there, and Sunday school, and whatever the need was for a place to get together, a fowl supper, for instance, or whatever. That was Arnott.
Okay. And the store itself, do you know how it came to be? I think it was in different spots at different times, wasn't it?
Yes, that was the one we're talking about now. It was part of the original store, but it was moved some several yards down to the highway location, just the store part, severed from the dwelling, and moved down there. And what prompted that move was there was word of the highway being, well, updated, and the first, it was cement, was the pavement that was put down, not asphalt like they do now. And that thought in mind, they thought there might be catch more business and put in a gas pump or something like that. And that's just a little bit of the background of the development of things as they went along.
So originally, the store owners, did they live above the store or behind the store?
No, the dwelling, yeah, it was part of the store, the original, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just an ordinary home, but the store happened to be built to the side of it.
Oh, I
and
see.
it was able to be separated from the original and moved. And the store part that was moved was reduced a bit in size, I think, and the dwelling part was on the back of the store, but by today's standards, it was very small.
And do you know what year it was that it was moved, roughly?
I could be wrong by a few months or a year, but I think it was around 1933, 34, right in there that it was moved.
Okay.
I know my dad put the gas pumps in and ready to go in 1935, and that'd be a year or so after the rest of it was moved down there. So I know it was 1935 because he put that inscription with the imprint of a horseshoe on the cement base for it, you know.
Fun.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
When did your parents take over the store? When did they buy it?
Late 20s.
Okay.
Maybe 29, somewhere in there. I can't, as you will know, even at my advanced age, I was very young then.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And so that's about when they would take over.
And were they from Arnott and just took over the store, or did they move to Arnott to take over the store?
They moved to Arnott and moved into the old store before it was moved down, you see, and they had started out together in Toronto and weren't there too long till they decided to come. That was my dad's home,
Okay.
Arnott area.
Okay.
So they come back there and the store became available, and that's where they started.
Okay. So you really grew up in the store.
I did, yeah.
Did you have sisters and brothers?
I had a brother, Ken. He was 3 years younger than me.
And did you work in the store as you were growing up? Once you were old enough, did you help?
Yeah, to a limited capacity. I can well remember my job. Of course, there was no hydro. You sometimes forget that nowadays, but there was no hydro in service in that part. My mother sold soft drinks out of the store, and somebody come in for a bottle of pop. It was my job to go down to the basement. They'd be laying on the basement floor to keep them cool.
Right, right.
And up and down those basement steps, you know. That's what I'd need today to get back into shape, you know.
That's a good job for a little kid. Up and
Yeah,
down.
well, it was that was part of my job.
What other kinds of things did you sell in the general store? I mean, we all have these ideas of what a general store was like. Was it a convenience store? Was it a grocery store? But what kinds of things did your family sell?
Well, pretty limited to what you're used to buying today when you go to the store. Most of the food consumed was produced right there on the farm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the main staples then would be, well, flour, sugar, tea for sure. And at the top of the list, if you wanted to keep peace in the family, there had to be tobacco.
Oh, okay.
And that, you know, there was other things. I know there was different spices. There was a little shelves built or drawers built in this wall cabinet there with a little knob on them, pull them out, and there'd be the various types of seasonings and pepper and salt and other seasonings that I'm not that familiar with. But that kind of thing would be kept there. And there was limited canned goods. Not like the variety you have now, but there was carnation milk. I can remember seeing that on the shelf, the canned milk, and some soups and vegetables and that kind of thing, but very limited because most farmers did their own.
Right.
And confectionery, there would be chocolate bars, which were only a nickel. Gum, chewing gum, 5 cents. You know, pop was only a nickel. We didn't serve ice cream because there was no way of keeping it refrigerated.
Right.
But there was qualities there in those days that you won't find in the existing way of doing shopping now in the big stores. To this day, if I don't do my shopping anymore, I haven't done for a couple of years, but I'd still like to go into the store and lean on the counter and talk to the person behind the counter, the owner or the clerk, and it was a little visit. You don't have that privilege nowadays. They want to get you in and out as quick as possible. There isn't even a bench or a chair to sit on.
True.
That isn't a requirement today. And some of those things that we had in the old general store and places of doing business in those days are just a memory. And too bad, I think.
Well, I think you raise a really interesting point about, I mean, we call it customer service today, but that idea that you can go in and you can build a relationship with the person at the store, and so then you look forward to just having that social visit and not just coming in and buying some more pepper or something, but it's a whole occasion in a way that shopping just isn't today.
Mm-hmm. To my way of thinking, we've lost an awful lot about the qualities of life. The shopping today isn't a visit. No. Let's get in and get out. Let's go before the crowd. You know. So it's vastly different. And you're in a hurry. Everybody's in a hurry. You could get hit with a shopping cart nowadays. But there was no shopping carts then that I know, just a basket. You maybe didn't buy that much, but it was more relaxed atmosphere, and I think people miss that today. Everybody's in such a hurry.
I think that that idea of the social visit and relationships just sounds so appealing. And one of the things that I read is that often in general stores, it was a social place that you could get together, and you'd run into old school chums, and there would be maybe music played at the store on a Saturday night.
Well, probably in some cases, but not in the Arnott General Store too much. Like, I might be playing the fiddle in the kitchen, but not for public entertainment. But a little story aside, along what you're mentioning. My mother, God bless her, worked hard to try and make a living, but in the 30s, nobody had money to spend very much, so it was pretty limited. And when you say it was a kind of a meeting place, that was one of the things that really bugged her in the store, that there'd be several in the community that would be close to the store. Well, I'll walk down, in the evening to the store and see who's there and what's going on. But it used to bug her a bit that she'd have to have the lights on in the store, burning coal oil in the lamps, and not selling anything. They just, maybe come down. The odd guy might buy if he smoked a cigar, or he needed a pipe full of tobacco or something. But the sales, by and large, were rather limited. But they'd stay and sit on seats that were available or on the floor or anything, just to discuss what was current in the community, And that didn't please Mum too good, because it had to be in the store, but she wasn't doing any business. It was really a kind of an expense that she didn't need.
So they were having fun, but Mom wanted to make money.
Isn't that the truth? That's the truth, and I remember that so well. In the summertime, it wasn't so bad. They'd sit out. There were steps down outside the store there, and they'd sit outside and philosophize. But in the wintertime, they'd still come to, you had to keep a fire on,
Yeah.
And it was only a small, the store, I don't think the store was any bigger than what we call our living room now, or our family room in our house that we live in. So it could be crowded. But, and the health hazards today, the health authorities would have a nightmare if they entered that room today, and all the blue smoke from these old pipes going, and open to the store goods. Oh. It's a wonder we survived.
Yeah, definitely a different standard.
Yeah.
What were the hours of the store? How long was it open to? Did your mom try to close at 5 o'clock at night, or did the hours go into
There was
the evening?
no hours.
Okay.
If somebody come for a loaf of bread or a gallon of gas, or coal oil was a must then, if you wanted a light.
Right.
And if somebody come, they'd forgot about it at 12 o'clock at night or got you out of bed. You got up and served them.
Wow.
You know, that's the way it was.
What was the store layout like? Was it, I've seen different pictures of how general stores were laid out. Do you remember how yours was?
You mean the interior?
Yes.
The store itself
Yes.
was very simple.
Okay.
We're sitting in a room today here in a kind of a square room, and you could picture behind where you were sitting, there'd be a counter going from that wall down maybe 12 feet or so.
Okay.
A big hardwood counter, wide top on it, thick maple planks. I can remember that so well. And on part of the counter sat a kitchen, something like not a kitchen scale, but a small scale
Okay.
for weighing, you know, a few pounds of sugar, a few pounds of this or that or the other thing. And it was no big fancy scale and where you had to punch in tax and everything else. Nobody heard of that stuff. The only visible, and it wasn't really visible, was a little tin cigar box in a drawer under the counter where you kept a bit of change or kept your money,
Okay.
you know? I can remember on the one end of the counter was cheese was a big seller in those days. And my mother would buy these big round cheeses. They were big, heavy fellas and sit it on the counter. And some of the old bachelors, I don't know how they survived, but they seemed to live on cheese and bread. And Mom would give me a quarter's worth of that old cheese. It always had to be old cheese. And Mom would have to cut a slab off to suit them and weigh it up on the scale, and that was fine. And about that time, there was a bake shop in Chatsworth.
Okay.
And a guy started a bake shop, and he was baking bread. And we got sort of introduced to what was generally called baker's bread, because everybody baked their own in those days, and you couldn't afford. But if you wanted a treat, you bought a loaf of baker's bread. And he delivered it to the store, and Mom would buy a few loaves, whatever. They were, I can remember the price being 8 cents for one loaf. Went up to 10, and gradually it got up to $4.50.
Holy smokes.
But that's in the modern store.
Yeah.
And that was another thing that came along. And they started selling a bit of bread, and sometimes there'd be a fancy cake or something like that, but just mainly bread, and no wrappers on the bread in those days. It was just a loaf of bread. That's what you got. There again, your health authorities weren't peeking at the what was going on. It didn't have to be wrapped up. You know, we never got sick from eating bread. So
Was there a cash register?
the only sign of a cash register was my mom had an old cigar box. It was tin with a lid on it that sat in a drawer under the counter. And that's no. And some of the larger stores in the village here in Chatsworth, for instance, might have a little more sophisticated place to put their money.
The general store at Arnott, like by the 30s, was it cash only, or did your parents extend credit to anyone or do any trades of goods?
That's a very good question. Can be sad, can be happy, but my mother used to have a sign hanging up on the wall. Please do not ask for credit. You have to know your customers, and if it was a good, honest customer, you would be obliged to give them credit. And it was hard to do because to keep a cash flow in a little business like that was pretty hard to do.
Especially in the 30s.
And yeah, it was just, but if you give some credit to somebody that forgot about it, it was a hard knock on the business. But those were the occupational hazards.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine I'd imagine honestly in the 30s that your mom probably heard a lot of really sad stories of people who were having hard times.
Yeah, it was difficult. And, but I don't know, we seemed to survive for a while anyway, but it seemed to take a war to free up any kind of money. And which is kind of sad too, but that's the other side of humanity.
Yeah.
But the old store, to give you a I don't know either you have a picture of the exterior, the front and that, you know, but when Mom and Dad bought the store and put in the gas pumps, they had to align themselves with an oil company in order to get the gas in.
Okay.
This happened to be the Canadian Oil Company. You girls are too young to remember the name, but it was, you know, what it was then, and their colors were yellow and white. And they had a painter that come around and they supplied the paint for painting the exterior of the store. And it was trimmed in yellow, their colors, Canadian Oil Companies. And they put up a kind of a board fence, and their decal was all on that, you know, outside. Made it look like a service station, you know. Mm-hmm. And they supplied a piece of, it would just be a big sign. It was about 4 feet by 4 feet, as I recall, to go on the side of the store, up near the eave, where it would be, you know, easy to read. And the painter painted it all up, put the lettering on it, and trimmed it in this yellow paint, and the background was white. And as a little guy, I noticed when I reading this sign that he just printed there, it said, R. Wielden, General Merchant. Mm-hmm. But I don't know whether the painter had much education or not. But the merchant is Merchant. But he made, instead of a C, an E. And it said General Marahant. And I noticed this, and I told Mom, I said, that isn't spelled right. And I don't know where I got all the education all of a sudden. But they never changed it.
Really?
It was there till, well, I don't know where it is now, but it was there as long as I was, And that was the general store. Now, on the front of the store, there were glass, big, we'd call them picture windows nowadays, but they were all individual panes,
Right.
Yep.
And it said, Salada tea is good tea. And that was in lettering that was stuck on the panes in the Salada Tea Company was in a kind of a rainbow on the top, and then underneath it said, is good tea. I can remember that so well. As well as the signs on the wall below that said, Old Chum Smoking Tobacco.
Okay.
See, it was, you could advertise tobacco in those days too. And so much more freedom than we have today.
It occurs to me, what were your parents' full names? Like R. Wielden, what did the R stand for?
Richard.
Richard? And what was your mom's name?
Jesse.
Richard and Jesse.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued by the idea of your dad putting in gas pumps. That seems like such a smart idea, really on the cusp of developing things. Did other general stores in the area copy his idea?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. And now, here's another thing. You can't buy a gallon of gas in Chatsworth today.
Nope.
Mainly because there was only one service station and they're remodeling it. But there is only one gas pump in Chatsworth when it's open. And it's surprising, in the old days, you asked that question. I could remember when there were 6 or 7 in Chatsworth.
Really?
Just single pumps, you could get gas? Yeah. And every little store and service station had a gas pump. And you didn't say fill her up then. Nobody had the money to fill up a gas tank. I shouldn't say nobody, but it'd be an exception rather than the rule. But as I well remember, hanging on to the gas pump hose, and somebody'd say, give me 2 gallons. And you'd see the marks on the tank go down till it hit the 2. It wasn't automatic like it is today. And that was, Mom would always be warning me, now don't let that go over the mark, because it's all right to give full measure, but not, don't overdo it.
Yeah, don't give extra. I can't imagine gas, relatively speaking, was a lot cheaper then than it is now.
Yes, the gas was, as I recall, was about 28 cents a gallon. And then since the metric system has come to this country, most of the younger crowd today don't know what you're talking about when you're saying a gallon of gas. Now we're talking of these little, they're just about the size of a pop bottle, you know.
Yeah.
Is the price of gas for a liter. So a tremendous change. And of course, along with that, there's a tremendous change in the wages that people make too. So it's all relevant in a way, but I don't think the value's there that it used to be.
Well, did your parents ever hire anyone to work in the store?
Never needed to. Couldn't afford it. Anyway, there's no need to. You lived at the store, you worked at the store, and you didn't think about holidays, and you had to have time off. You were, you know, stressed out. I never heard that word, stressed. Then you would get tired.
Yes, I would
but
imagine.
That's different.
Yeah.
And so, no, they never hired anybody, never needed to. The one thing that was difficult, my dad worked out a lot. He wasn't a storekeeper. He wasn't born to be a merchant, you know. But Mom was
She sounds like the businesswoman.
the store part. I'm going back in years, you know, and I'll have nightmares tonight maybe about when I was a young person and active, and maybe I'll relive some of this stuff again that I'm telling you today.
How long did your parents have the store for? How many years?
They didn't have the store that long. It's a lot of years. I guess probably about 14, 15 years, somewhere in there. I quit high school and I got a little bit of high school. God bless her, mother made me go to high school. She wanted me to have some kind of education, which I didn't absorb too well, but that'll be 41 I quit school.
Francis, did they sell clothes in the store?
No, originally they did in the first, you know, what I call the original store before it was moved down to the highway. They sold, because as I told you, the original owner was a tailor.
Right.
I think you and I talked about that before we sat down to this chat. And he was a tailor by trade, and he made suits and alterations and all that kind of thing in a room back of the grocery store.
And no shoes in the store?
Yeah, there'd be footwear
As
along that too. But see, the most of that happened before I realized what was going on. I wasn't old enough. My first recollection of being at the old store I'd be 4 or 5 years old. But in those days, general store meant just what it meant, general, because and most of them kept the staples that they would be asked for, you know, at a general store.
Was there something sold that sold a lot? Like, did candy sell a lot? Or tobacco?
Tobacco was a big seller. I can remember Mom would say to me, you know, she'd take eggs in on trade for groceries. Somebody had send a basket of eggs down, and a dozen or two or something, and she paid so much a dozen, and then they'd spend it in groceries, you see. And this one particular family, there was the mother and the dad. The boys smoked, and she'd send the one lad down to the store to get some groceries with a basket of eggs. And by the time she got the tobacco taken off the worth of the eggs, and there wasn't much left for groceries.
So she traded eggs for tobacco.
She'd give you, maybe the eggs, I can remember them being about 12 cents a dozen. And she'd pay you 12 cents a dozen for your eggs. And then that'd be a credit to you. You could spend that in groceries. And Mom used to feel sorry for the poor old mother. She wouldn't have much left for groceries because the boys got it all in smoke, tobacco.
And no alcohol, I would imagine.
Oh, no. Sure, that's what bootleggers were for in those days. And anybody that, alcohol, I guess, was always available at the right sources, but never in the general store.
Do you remember any funny stories that happened when you were in the store?
Okay. On the end of this big long counter where the transactions took place in the Arnott General Store, there sat a candy case. And I would judge it was maybe, 3 feet square, with a glass door on top of it that was in a wood frame that lifted up from the inside of the counter. Mom had a latch on it that she hooked unless she wanted to get into it. But some of the local boys, like, you're just because you're young, don't mean you're not looking around and knowing what's going on. And this glass candy case, she'd have chocolate bars and chewing gum and various licorice pipes and plugs and all that kind of junk food that you would call it. Sweet Marie chocolate bars are very popular. Guys would come in, give me a Sweet Marie and a Coke. That was a pretty good fix for 10 cents.
Yes.
And so, but anyway, these two boys, neighbor boys, come in and they needed the coal oil can filled up. And Mom had to go out. There was what we called the oil room at the back of the store, kept separate, away from any grocery or anything. They'd send her out there to fill up the oil can. Well, they got to know about this latch on the back of the lid on the candy case. Flipped it open, you could put your hand around there and pick out a chocolate bar. Kind of self-serve.
Right.
And so Mom was pretty sharp. After they left, happened to look in the case, and she seen the latch was undone, and she seen there was a kind of a vacancy where the Sweet Marie chocolate bars sat. And anyway, she went out and followed these boys down the road, and she found the chocolate bar papers on the road. And she confronted them, Nothing came of it. You wouldn't say anything but to the parents or that. But they didn't steal any more chocolate bars. But those were, just minor things that any kid would do.
Yeah.
given the opportunity. And I can remember that so well, that her, can you imagine her going down after those boys and catching them, you know? But that was 10 cents gone there, right there.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Your mom sounds like a really sharp cookie.
Well, she was a great person that I think grew up in the wrong times for what she had to put up with. You know, it was, when we talk now about these stores, little country stores, and it's a different era, and it's pretty hard to relate to a younger generation what it was like to not have, you know, the wherewithal to buy some things that today we think are necessary, you know, or to buy anything. You know, the ideal pork products in Owen Sound were quite a source of meats, of pork products at that time, and it called, they called on my mother's store. They made sausage and bologna, all that kind of stuff, you know, and she handled some of the stuff that she could keep and sell fairly quickly because of there's no refrigeration then.
Right.
And I can remember the Metzgers owned the business in Owen Sound, and this Elmer Metzger used to be on the truck delivering, and he'd come along, and Ken and I'd be standing watching for him coming, and he must have felt sorry for us sometimes, I don't know. And by God, often he'd give us a wiener, you know. And you'd think you got, you know, something wonderful. Mm-hmm. It was all part of being good to a kid, I guess.
Yeah.
And different than today.
Yeah. But don't forget.
Well, I'm wondering what happened to the store. Your parents sold the store, and did they move to Chatsworth then, or?
Well, that's a kind of a personal tale that you get off into that side. It gets away from the focus of the store itself. I'd be telling you about the hard time we had growing up, and I don't want to relate about that too much because I wasn't the only one. There was lots of people who went through the same thing, and when I put it bluntly, that situation at that time was that they had to sell the store. They couldn't keep it any longer.
Okay.
And so you can deduct what you like from that. You learned a lot of how to survive and so forth. And when I look back now, and well, 96 isn't too bad.
Nope, not at all.
You look at the fun along with it, you know. And there were some funny sides to even the tough times. You know, people learn to enjoy themselves. I know one of the first things my dad did at the old store was put in a couple of horseshoe pits out front in a bit of lawn between the store and the highway. Mm-hmm. And the guys would pitch horseshoes at nights till it got so dark you couldn't see the stakes. But that was a bit of entertainment. We eventually, the local lads talked the old gentleman that owned the little farm there that the store set on, part of the property, into letting them use it for a ball diamond. And we had a good ball team at Arnott for quite a while in those days, and that was a source of of recreation at Arnott. I can still see some of these old fellas. They were probably look like I do now, sitting up on the bank back of the ball screen there, giving the umpire hell, you know. Just real humorous when you think about it now. And of course it brought a bit of business to the chat and to the store. Mm-hmm. People got thirsty hollering at the umpires, so they come in for a pop. Yeah, those little communities, those little stores, they had a function that a lot of people wouldn't think about, or we didn't think about at that time. It's just part of living, but they were, when you think of it, a big part of the community.
Well, it's something I wonder about in a community like Arnott. Did the general store disappear before the village disappeared, or did they disappear at roughly the same time? We know after the Second World War that a lot of these communities, people slowly started leaving them.
Well, the war was a tough spell for everybody. And the little store operator had a little more pressure than usual. You see, gasoline was rationed. Tea was rationed. Sugar was rationed, to name a few of the things. And of course, a lot of imported stuff wasn't available anyway. Handling these ration tickets. You got your coupon book with the coupons in, and when you wanted so much sugar or so many dollars worth, I forget now, I often wish, hindsight's a great thing, that I'd kept my old ration book I had for gasoline. You wanted a couple of gallons of gasoline, you had to give so many these coupons. They were valued, and it was the same for tea and sugar and that. And that's when I first was introduced to saccharin. Oh. You know what saccharin is?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I didn't like it. It was a terrible sweetener, I thought, but it was a substitute for things we couldn't get. Yeah, I remember the ration books. And if you misplaced those little coupons, they just tore off those little pages, you know. I wasn't allowed to handle them because I did it, you know, it could get misplaced. Well, then my mother would have to turn them into the wholesalers, you see, when she were renewing the supplies.
Yeah, I can see where that would put a lot of pressure on a small storekeeper.
Yes, it was. But then you asked me another thing about the graduation from when these local stores started to meet their demise, really. And that don't happen overnight, but it happens fairly rapidly when the business isn't there. And part of it was due to how affluent the society got when the government decided to spend some money when the war for war work, and spending money to save our lives, save the country. I don't know. The money had something to do with it. 'Cause you had $1 in your pocket, you could buy a little more gas, you could get farther away from home.
Right.
And it got to be a great thing with the rural people. A lot of them that had a car would go to Owen Sound Saturday night and park on the main street in Owen Sound. And you'd visited, sitting in your car, and the neighbor would come walking along or somebody, and God, they'd hop in and you'd have a conversation. Or you just wanted, my mother would say, gosh, I'd like to get the chance to town, go through the 15-cent store. But that was the start of the regression of the country store. Ones would hang on a little longer and specialize in things you can buy at that certain store in the country, but by and large, they disappeared. As far as profitability was concerned. I'm the wrong one to ask about that. I certainly wouldn't want to go back to some of the hardships they suffered then, but there's things about it that was all right too. And but that's where the things went on it didn't take long. By the 50s, you know, the little places like Chatsworth, there used to be 6 stores here, grocery stores.
Wow.
Maybe 4 gas pumps, 5 gas pumps, you know. Can't find them now. The Arnott store is gone. That just happens to be in my backyard, but there was lots of elders. Every little place developed a store.
The store disappears and the town disappears, like you said at the very beginning. When I asked where Arnott is, and you said, no, it's where Arnott was. And it's gone now.
It's gone. When Arnott disappeared, I told you they had a little community hall. And I was one of the last survivors of the Arnott Community Center Board, if you can imagine such a prestigious position. When the store was moved away, it was sold privately and moved, and it's not down farther in the second of Holland and remodeled into a bit of a dwelling.
Okay.
That's where it is today.
Okay.
Myself and another remaining member of this community center board decided that we should commemorate the memory of Arnott. Because it was always printed on the map. It was a place on the map.
Well, and you said the train used to stop there sometimes, didn't it?
Yeah, well, there was no station there, but there was a siding. And by that I mean a double track.
Oh, okay, okay.
And there used to be a lot of stuff moved by rail in those days. And it would be loaded in little places like Chatsworth or Holland Center or whatever. And there was a little siding there for that, and it wasn't only for that reason alone. Part of it was, in those days, all the grain that come out of the elevators from the Great Lakes passed through Chatsworth. It was going for export. I shouldn't say all of it, because there was another railroad. There was a CNR that went out, you know, the other side of Owen Sound, but I'm speaking for the CPR that came this way and came through Arnott. And if they overloaded their train, it would get stuck. The engine, the wheels on the drivers on the engine would spin, and we as kids would hear it. Oh, the train's stuck. We got to watch this. And so you'd run down, and there'd be a guy get up on the car and split the train in two. And part of it would come on, and they'd pull off on the siding in Arnott and park it.
Okay.
And then they'd back the engine up and hook onto the rest and pull it away up, because it's a gradual grade from Chatsworth down south till you get to Holland Center or Berkeley. A gradual upgrade. And that's how they'd get truck on the, split up the train and get it moving again. Those are probably little known facts of the younger generation today, what a community like Arnott served at that time as far as the rail was concerned. The rail was very important then, and I miss it to this day, because when we moved up here in '76, the train was still running, but soon after that they tore it up, and that was something that I never forgot. I think we should still had it, but anyway.
And that's why we're so glad you're talking with us today, so we can remember all these things.
Well, I remember some of the things, and most of them are good memories. I need to be jogged once in a while to kickstart them, you know, but most of them are fairly accurate, I think.
We like to end on good memories.
I want to ask, what was your favorite thing about growing up in a general store? What part, we always think there's something special about what our parents do, and we get to do or experience something special that other kids don't get to. And
Well,
your parents had a general store, so what was especially fun or special or interesting for you as a kid in the store?
Well, one of the things that comes to mind would be just being there, that it seemed to be a place where you maybe heard firsthand what took place somewhere. Did you hear? You know, there was always little happenings. You might think they were large or small, or somebody passed away, you know, the sad side. But you were generally in a position where you heard it first, or second maybe, but it was there. You'd hear them talking about it. The other thing, of course, that there was a time in life when I didn't have too many responsibilities. And while maybe things weren't always that great, but you know, the biggest thing was to get up and get to school in time. That was, you know. But as far as growing up there, the store itself, the building, my dad got it kind of fixed up to being fairly comfortable to what we had been used to. And I hated leaving there as a kid.
Yeah.
And I just hated leaving it. That was the best. I moved with my parents about 7 times in the act of growing up. And I never liked one of them. I've been here for 46 years, and I don't want to move now, but I know that I'm going to have to before long. If you girls will come back again sometime and have another little chat, maybe I'll stay till you come.
Well, that's a good invitation.
Deal.
Yeah. This chat today has been wonderful. I've learned things that I haven't heard before, and it's been really interesting.
I could tell you so many side stories about growing up in Arnott, not all pertaining to the Arnott store, but some of the most hilarious damn stuff, you know. Well, I can't do this. We're on air. This is the first time I've been interviewed like this in my life. And I don't want to spoil my reputation.
Yes, we would not want to besmirch your good name.
But it's been fun talking to you, and
Good.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's lots of things that I've missed, but you forget some of the stuff too. That's just as well. The museum is trying to do Grey County and so forth. They're putting together quite a little village up there, and I hope the Arnott store fits in, but let it be a replica.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you again for talking with us today.
Well, it's been a pleasure, you know. I don't know. I know my son's at the bottom of getting you girls all together here and coming, because
He's an organizer.
Yeah.
well, he don't tell me too much. And he just said, Dad, they're coming to interview you a bit about the old store, you know, but I didn't know. But anyway.
So did we do a good job?
I think you did. I'd just love to turn the tables on you sometime and interview. But maybe another day, another place.
All right.
Fair enough, fair enough.
And thank you very much for being so courteous to an old guy that just likes to sit and yap.
I feel really grateful because when we are finally able to open the store, people are going to come in and they're going to ask us questions about what things